Our breaking news tonight, CBS News correspondent Bob Simon has died. The 73-year-old was killed tonight in an auto accident here in New York City. Simon was known for reporting on some of the biggest stories from around the world since the late 1960s. He was a regular contributor to 60 Minutes and a correspondent for all 7 seasons of 60 Minutes, too. Joining me now to discuss this and more, Lanny Davis, the author of Crisis Tales, 5 Rules for Coping with Crisis in Business, Politics, and Life, and former White House special counsel for the Clinton administration. Also, Mark Feldstein of the University of Maryland's Merrill College of Journalism, and Brian Stelter and Gabriel Sherman back with us. We've reported on the death of Bob Simon, again, as we've been talking, a changing media landscape. This was a big change tonight if you watched nightly news. Listen to the open of their show.
It is an enormously difficult story to report. Brian is a member of our family, but so are you, our viewers, and we will work every night to be worthy of your trust.
So that was Lester Holt, and he looked pretty and sounded pretty pained. Yeah. You took the word right out of my mouth, but also in at the top of that, for NBC Nightly News, it usually says this is NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams.
That's right.
And so it said tonight, NBC Nightly News, Lester Holt reporting.
One more indication that NBC is, at least for now, removing Brian Williams.
Dismantling it.
From the network. I mean, he is staying at home. He's not coming into work. This is a real suspension, and with obviously financial costs as well. We're talking about 6 months of salary on the side as well. That's at least $5 million. You can imagine.
I hear that number is higher. I mean, he's left a lot of money on the table. And you think about the millions of marketing dollars they put into building him up as an anchor.
Right.
To strip his name from that title, that's a huge loss that the network is taking.
But Lanny Davis, what do you think of this? His name isn't on the broadcast anymore.
Well, first of all, we all have to be sad for what was a great career that has been at least abruptly stopped, and I hope will be allowed to come back, because I haven't yet been convinced, and I'm glad to be able to ask this question of Brian, that there is a difference. Researchers have proven there's a difference between memory mistakes and lies. And I haven't seen the evidence of intentional misrepresentation. Brian, you were the recipient of a text message from a helicopter pilot who, the day before on CNN, said that he had piloted Brian Williams and that there had been ground fire, although not Brian Williams' helicopter. The next day he texted you, at least I read this in CNN,
right.
And he said, "My memory was wrong." Now, we give him, for sure, I give him the benefit of the doubt. Why the double standard? The jump and rush to judgment that he lied, I think, is premature.
I think one of the reasons why we've seen more scrutiny of Williams is that there's been other stories come up involving Hurricane Katrina, as you know. But I think you're making an important point. Williams says these were a series of innocent mistakes. We should say that as well when we're talking about this topic. I do think that the Stars and Stripes interview that came out a week ago suggests that he was continuing to say some of the same wrong things, even when confronted with the evidence.
And I want to just add one thing. In my reporting, I found out that people inside NBC were trying to get him to stay closer to the facts. His former boss, Steve Kappas, Tom Brokaw is another, had heard him tell these stories over the years, and they tried to rein him in. So I don't think this is a clear set case. It might be faulty memory, but my sense is that even his colleagues felt he had a tendency to embellish.
But I want
which raises the question.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, it raises the question about NBC management and what their culpability in all of this is. If they knew about this, and there have been credible reports that they received information about these exaggerations and lies, yes, I think we can use the word lie, contrary to what Lanny Davis says, from military eyewitnesses and, or at least one military eyewitness and others within NBC, the question has to be asked, was NBC management protecting him? Were they covering up? You know, in the scandal, and Lanny, you know, you wrote a book on this, it's often not the crime but the cover-up itself. And so the issue is greater than Brian Williams. If I were running Comcast, I'd be asking some serious questions about the management of NBC.
Can I jump in here, because Do we really need to relitigate this, Gabe? Because you're reporting that they handed him a dossier of his reporting and maybe misrepresentation. He's admitted that he
But let's say it
overstated
is
the
possible
facts.
here. Let's put up one possible scenario, which is that NBC is trying to distance itself from Brian Williams, trying to create a lot of space between executives and Brian Williams. It's possible that they want us all to believe that there's a lot of bad things out there about Brian Williams. I'm not saying that's happening. I'm just saying it's one possibility. There are points in these sorts of scandals where the interests of the anchor and the interests of the networks divulge.
Yeah, I've got to get to Jon Stewart, his good friend, by the way. Let's take a listen to what he told his audience last night.
17 years is the longest I have ever in my life held a job by 16 years and 5 months. Thank you. The upshot there being, I am a terrible employee. But in my heart, I know it is time for someone else to have that opportunity. And
that's how your audience would react.
Yes, I was going to say.
That's how your audience would
most
react.
of us, the longest I'd ever been at a job was 3 years. This is the longest I've been at any job. So I know what he's saying. And to be able to, it's important, Lanny, especially when you have jobs in the media, when you have a job like Jon Stewart, to be able to spend have a dinner with your family on a weeknight is a big deal for him, and he said that's what he's going to do.
Look, I love Jon Stewart, but a lot of kids, including my own, mistake what he does for news, and I think he's a great talent, but kids should be watching the nightly newscasts and not Jon Stewart for news. But do you mind if I just come back in about one more time? Everything I heard, very distinguished panel that you have tonight. No facts, just suggestions, innuendo. There's a file. We hear that. One of the things as a crisis manager, I'm surprised that NBC isn't more transparent, is allowing somebody to be hung out on innuendo. No facts tonight. The only thing we know is Brian Williams says he had a memory conflation, a misremember is what the gentleman told in the text message to you. One day he said he was flying that helicopter. The next day he said, oops, I misremembered because I heard other pilots. We don't know whether he lied. Now, I respect you if you think he did, but there's too much innuendo, and NBC is responsible for not being more transparent about exactly what they know, what they don't know, and what they're investigating.
If it was all just innuendo, Lanny, do you think that they would pull their multi-million-dollar anchor off of a newscast just
and
for
find
clearly,
Don,
hang on, let me finish my statement.
Yeah,
clearly, they must know, and they obviously do because they're at the center of it, more than what any of us in this panel, anybody in the media, even our trusty media correspondent here, they know
Don,
more than what we know.
I agree with you. The inference is that $5 million is what they fine him, 6 months. That might kill a career. They must. But the fact that we don't know sitting here tonight any more than what Brian has said, and this is a man whose lifetime career is now at risk, we should at least know why they rushed so quickly to do this. And I would say that at the very least, at some point, they need to be transparent, if not now, at some point. And Brian Williams, at some point, should respond to media questions in detail as to what caused this, what I still believe was an honest memory mistake.
That's going to have to be it. Thank you. Very well put. Thank you, Lanny Davis, and thanks to the rest of our panel here. When we come right back, true crime stories.